Hi everyone, this is Elaine. I'm back again with the last video that I'm going to post for 2024. If this is your first time watching, welcome. If you have been watching my videos for a while, I appreciate all the support. And, with every comment that I get that someone shares their story, it opens up the light and the awareness of the message that I'm trying to send when I created this channel. So if this is your first time watching and you don't know and you want to know a little bit more about me, I grew up in San Diego, California, and I grew up in a religious fundamentalist cult called the Iglesia Ni Cristo. I was born and raised in it and offered as a baby. I left in my early 20s, and then even though my physical body transitioned out of the cult, I was left with a lot of psychological damages and mental health damages that affected the way I related to others, the way I related to people at work and my friendships. It caused a lot of damage, and I had to do a lot of healing through seeking therapy, holistic medicine, and kind of distancing myself from that system, that system of coercive power. So this video, as you can see, is called How Brainwashing Occurs in the Iglesia Ni Cristo. It is mainly educational for families and parents that are raising their children in this type of system. And so what I wanted to say with that is I do have a master's degree in education with a concentration in counseling from San Diego State University. I also have a certification in mental health and trauma-informed care. Now, with that being said, I know the term brainwashing, it's a very when you hear the term brainwashing, it has a very negative connotation to it. But there's a reason why it's called brainwashing. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you so I could give you a better educational depiction of what brainwashing looks like in the Iglesia Ni Cristo, how it can cause biological damages, how it can cause psychological damages, and how it can cause mental health disorders to occur in someone. So let's go ahead and share my screen like I always do. I've been working on this for a while. I just finished my first year in my clinical counseling program. So I'm using the tools and the knowledge that I have gained from my program to share this information with you. I hope it resonates in some way. So let me go ahead and enlarge this. If you are raising your child in the Iglesia Ni Cristo, it's really important to understand the psychological damages that could possibly occur. So let's start from the beginning, that developmental age, when the child is being raised and is in the children's worship service. Because in the children's worship service, that's where the children start to hear these messages. Keep in mind, a child's brain is very sponge-like and will absorb really easily the messages that they are being taught. So in the Iglesia Ni Cristo, that developmental group, I think it's like from preschool age up until pre-adolescence is when they have to attend children's worship service. That age group in the Iglesia Ni Cristo is called binhi. Binhi in Tagalog means seed. So you're planting little seeds. In reality, you're planting little messages into the child's brain, in the subconscious brain that they're unaware of. Because when the children are hearing these messages, they're not really understanding on a cognitive, intellectual level what it actually means. So, most of these messages that are based in the doctrines and the lessons that the children hear twice a week for about, I would say, roughly 20 to 30 minutes, this is what they're hearing. You are a sinner. Inherently, you are a sinner. You are not worthy of love without your membership. It's conditional. So the church, I'm the God. I'm only giving you your love if you have membership in this church. They're also hearing the message that I'm flawed. I'm unlovable. Okay, so we're going to get into how those messages are presented to the children in the next slide. So please pay attention so that we can really understand what is going on in the Iglesia Ni Cristo. The way it's presented to the children is twice a week mandatory lessons, and also to keep in mind that the parents are also attending the adult worship service mandatory as well, where they had to, I used to flip my name tag, and that's how they would track the attendance. So I say repetitive mandatory drilling because the way that these messages are, transferred and transmuted to the children is from memorization and a very strict question answer. So we'll get into that in the second slide. This is where the trauma happens during the indoctrination process. When the children are hearing these mandatory repetitive messages, this is where the brain is receiving the messages, and this is where the trauma is happening to the brain, which affects the body. A lot of the times, there are rules that are being established and taught to these children. And one of the rules is if I don't obey, it's linear. If I don't obey, then I will be punished. If I don't obey, then I will be punished. If I don't obey, then I will be punished. And it's embedded subconsciously in the mind. This is where we get into how the trauma happens in the brain of a child that grows up in the Iglesia Ni Cristo. These are the three main areas that are affected from this type of indoctrination from the Bible lessons. The prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for cognitive functioning and critical thinking. Now, when you keep hearing these messages of impending hell, your brain is gonna, it's very similar to how like an alcoholic keeps drinking alcohol. Their critical thinking skills are turned off because of the damage from the alcohol. It's very similar. There's a parallel there with the prefrontal cortex and when they're hearing these repetitive messages. The amygdala, which is a part of the brain that is responsible for fear-based responses, that part of the brain also gets affected. So how that plays out is by the fight or flight nervous system response. The amygdala gets really affected by these messages and it can cause hypervigilance where like it's almost as if you're not really in your own body because your body is when you keep hearing the threats of hell and from, keep in mind developmental age up until pre-adolescence, up until adulthood, you're kind of always going to be in this sense of fear, like where you're scanning, and your brain is going to be perceiving the outside world as dangerous. So people that are watching this might even perceive me as dangerous because I'm an outsider, because I'm not part of the Iglesia Ni Cristo anymore. I might be perceived as of the world, because that's what you're taught. Like you're taught that everyone outside of the church is going to hell because they don't have membership. Now, here we get into the hippocampus. This part of the brain is, let's go down here. Let's go down. I'll shrink this. So the hippocampus is right here, and it is responsible for long-term memory formation. It's responsible for instinctual thinking. It's also responsible for a sense of smell. So when you grow up in the Iglesia Ni Cristo as a child, this portion of the brain, the hippocampus, is going to be smaller than someone that doesn't grow up in the Iglesia Ni Cristo. Okay, so those are the three main areas. I just want to do a brief overview of the three main areas of the brain that are affected when you grow up in a high control fundamentalist cult religion. Um, so here's where we get into the mental health aspects. Now you might be thinking, not everyone is going to have a mental health disorder from being raised in the Iglesia Ni Cristo. And you wouldn't know what? That's true. But there is a piece that I want to highlight. If you have a genetic predisposition to anxiety or depression, and you go through something traumatic, like, I don't know, like a big breakup, These core messages, the you are a sinner, you are not worthy without your membership, I'm flawed, I'm unlovable will be activated. That's why I put that button there. So keep in mind the biological genetic component when those core messages are activated in someone's body, that's when we see the mental health disorders come up. Anxiety, depression, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, low self-esteem, which are these are symptoms, low self-esteem, people-pleasing, poor critical thinking, inability to tap into intuition or use logic, high reliance on others for validation, black and white thinking, difficulty trusting self, inability to make decisions without others, and codependency. Okay, let me go ahead and also, all right, let me go ahead. Okay, so here is an actual sample lesson from the Iglesia Ni Cristo. Now, before we get into the sample lesson of how these messages are implanted in the child's brain, if you're a parent watching or you're a family member watching, I think it's really important if you could write these terms down so that you have a better understanding of how the Iglesia Ni Cristo is structured and what kind of religious system it is. Because we all know that there are various religions out there. We know that Christianity there's so many different Christian denominations, but where the Iglesia Ni Cristo ranks is on the far end of the Christianity spectrum that looks like extremism right here. And I have made a scale. So if you're a parent watching, please, I highly suggest you look up these terms: Puritan culture, fundamentalist, authoritarian, patriarchal, coercive control, and narcissism. That is how the Iglesia Ni Cristo is structured. It's a powerful system. A lot of people are attracted to power. They're attracted to beauty. If you look at the churches, they're so beautiful. But what really counts are the messages that are being sent. Because you can go to a fancy restaurant, but what's the atmosphere like? How are you being treated? That's what really matters at the end of the day. So here are some of the sample lessons. I just want to say if you are an ex-member watching this and if you grew up in it, there is a trigger warning here. So before we get into this part, I just want to say that please, you might be triggered by this and you might be re-traumatized by this. But I think I've worked through enough of my trauma that I can cover this topic. So, so this is how the brainwashing happens. This is an actual lesson. What is the punishment when one is separated from Christ or the Church of Christ, and the children all in unison say, no promise, no hope, and no God for those who are separated? Number 13, according to Christ, what will the people separated from him will suffer? They will be thrown into the lake of fire and burn. Now remember that these children are repeating and reciting these messages from about age 5 up until 12, twice a week, mandatory. The lessons are very similar in this regard. I'm going to say it again. They will be all in unison. They will be thrown into the lake, into the fire and burn. They will be thrown into the fire and burn. Number 14. Where will they burn? In the lake of fire. That is the second death. In the lake of fire. That is the second death. And those messages get embedded into the child's subconscious brain. I don't think they're really cognitively aware of what it means, but it does create a sense of fear, you know? And let's get into what kind of messages are these types of messages? Are they based on love? Are they based on fear? Or are they based on shame? And most of the time, these messages are based on not love-based messages, but shame and fear. And that's how codependency happens. It's almost like an abusive relationship. So, what are the children taking away from these messages? They internalize these messages from the doctrines. What messages are being reinforced? So, let's think about that for a second. The messages that are being reinforced is that love is only conditional. You only receive my love if you have membership. You only receive my love if you obey the church administration. That's conditional love. You take away those conditions, then we talk about unconditional love. I still love you if you're gay. I still love you if you want to leave this church. That's unconditional love. There's no restraints. So love is conditional in the Iglesia Ni Cristo, and I will only receive it if I have exclusive membership. This is not unconditional love. They're also learning there is no hope outside of the church. I am nothing without my membership. That's what they're learning. Can you think of any other messages that the children are learning from these worship services? And there's a beautiful quote that I have from this book. It's called the Indigo Children. Indigo children are they're children that are usually in the clinical terms have like ADHD or they're on the neurodivergent spectrum. These are children that tend to question things. They're critical thinkers. They tend to not really like authoritarian structure. They're really sensitive. They're creative. So an indigo child in the Iglesia Ni Cristo, I consider myself an indigo child, will not really thrive in this type of system. So one of the beautiful messages from this book, it says, the verbal and nonverbal messages sent to our children need to be consistently lighthearted and well-welcoming. Many times adults feel, act, and talk in ways that make children feel like they're anything but welcome. Rather, they are actually bad, a burden, or a nuisance. So that's a lot of the times, in the Iglesia Ni Cristo, the children, they are literally taught that they are unworthy of love unless they have membership. So, like I said, these are the three main areas that are affected by the children listening to these worship service lessons. And if you want to get a little bit more into the neuroscience, so the prefrontal cortex, like I said, by the children hearing these messages, some of the functions of the prefrontal cortex are going to be affected. So that's theory of mind. And theory of mind is the ability to intuit what other people might be thinking or feeling. That kind of gets shut off. Complex learning, abstract learning, empathy is a little bit lower when you grow up in the Iglesia Ni Cristo. Emotional regulation can also be stunted as well. So that's your ability to control your emotions and to regulate your emotions. Like I said, the hippocampus, which is responsible for long-term memory, also gets affected. Actually, there are studies that have shown that people who experience emotional abuse, which is really common in the Iglesia Ni Cristo, have smaller hippocampuses and larger amygdalas. So remember, I said the amygdala is responsible for that fight or flight nervous system. The your sympathetic nervous system when you perceive danger. Okay, so with the amygdala, with people who have experienced emotional abuse in a fundamentalist cult or any other religion, this might be affected too. So you might have a heightened sense of fear and anxiety when you grow up in the Iglesia Ni Cristo. Like I said in my previous videos, these symptoms are going to vary because there's other factors that are involved. I think one of the biggest mediating factors is if you have a family that isn't so extreme in their outlook. So, an example, let's go back to the scale here. So, if you have a family that is growing up in this extremist Christian cult, but their beliefs fall like maybe to the low to moderate end, and they're more attuned to the children's needs, they're not going to really be as affected on an emotional level because their needs are still being met. But if you have a parent that's really, let's go to the far end, on the extreme end of this scale where they're so authoritarian and they're operating from a place where they're scared and they want to control their child because they don't want their child to leave because they're so scared. that's when you will start to see the child be really affected, especially if the child is highly sensitive or empathic. Okay, that's when we start to see the mental health conditions, anxiety and depression, and things like that. So, to kind of put things into context, um, I want to share something with you. And we're going to watch a clip from one of my favorite shows about emotional abuse. Let me see if I can. And it's very similar to what the Iglesia Ni Cristo does when they preach these lessons to the children. So let's look at what emotional abuse looks like in a domestic violence relationship, which is really similar to the emotional abuse in the Iglesia Ni Cristo.
Sorry, I picked glass out of Maddie's hair last night. I didn't mean for it to be that frustrating. Hey, I would never hurt her. You know that.
Listen to it.
I don't know that. You serious right now? Okay, what's the plan here? Where are you gonna go? I pay all the bills. I let you hang out with my friends. I let you move into my trailer. You drink my beer, eat my food. I let you mooch off me. I do everything for you. If you walk out of here, you'll have no one. I know. I'm well aware of just how completely alone and fucked I am, Sean. But I'm not going to pick glass out of Maddie's hair again. It's just not going to happen. Hey, where are you going?
So that was just an audio. You couldn't really see the clip of the show, but you could hear the type of messages that that guy was telling his ex-girlfriend. Where are you gonna go? What are you gonna do without me? I do everything for you. I pay for all the bills. I do this. If you leave here, you're nothing. You're nothing without me. It's the same type of messaging that the Iglesia Ni Cristo promotes to these children, and that's emotional abuse. Okay, so that's how brainwashing happens in the Iglesia Ni Cristo. And I'm going to go down here and I'm going to end the video with this. If you have more than one child and you're raising your child in the Iglesia Ni Cristo, we all know that each of, say you have 3 children, but they all look different, right? Every child that you have is going to look different, except if you have like identical twins, that's a different story. But if you have 3 children, they're all beautiful, right? In their own way. Maybe, I put 3 flowers here. Now, my question is to you parents, will every flower need the same environment? Some flowers might need more sunlight. Some flowers might need more nurturing. Some flowers might need more soil to grow. Not every flower is the same. So what I'm trying to say is maybe you have a child that is more sensitive, more empathic, and they're hearing these messages. It can cause a lot of damage to them emotionally. So this is my quote. I created it. And then you're gonna I hope you could take away something from it. It says every flower is unique and each flower might need a different environment, which requires different amounts of support and watering to grow and bloom into something beautiful. So it's, I hope you could try to like see your children in that way. Like not every child is going to be the same and not every child is going to flourish in the Iglesia Ni Cristo. So if you're a parent watching, I highly, highly recommend these books so that you can kind of gain an educational awareness. So there's this book is you can't really see it, sorry, but it's called The Highly Sensitive Person. If you want to learn more about highly sensitive people, if you think your child is highly sensitive and they're growing up in the Iglesia Ni Cristo, I'll leave that recommendation below. Another book that I recommend is Leaving the Fold, um, a guide for former fundamentalists and others relieving their religion. I will also leave that below. Now, I just want to say that this video was not meant to point blame or shame. This is an educational video about how brainwashing happens in the Iglesia Ni Cristo. I hope you learned something new today. I hope you can take away some of the messages that I was trying to present in this video. And I will leave If you want to work with me and you want to have a discussion and collaborate with me, I'll leave my Google form below so that maybe we can talk and have a conversation about what I discussed today or any other topics that you might have. And um, if you want a copy of this PDF, I will definitely send it to you. Feel free to email me. I'll leave all my information below. And everyone, thank you so much for watching. This is a very important topic for me. And I hope you all have a beautiful new year. Bye.